is Soleil.
I'm Ariana.
We're the co-founders of Equality Education.
We are a women-owned personal development company. Soleil and I are the co-founders. And we are here with Friends Who Want You to Win, a podcast where we have honest conversations about all the ways that you can begin to and continue discovering your greatness.
You're about to experience the kind of best friend conversations that have been helping us level up our life and celebrate each other's wins for years.
Yes, we are so excited for you to be joining the conversation today. In our episode, we're focusing on radical accountability and personal responsibility. We'll explain all of that. Don't worry if you don't know what it is right now. We are asking you, what's your excuse this time? And talking about how those excuses have been holding you back in life. Aren't you tired of feeling stuck? Because I have been. I know, Soleil, you have been.
Period.
All of our progress begins with taking responsibility for your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, the only things that we can control in life.
So join us in this conversation as we dive into radical accountability. We will be talking about what is it, how it applies to you, and what you can do today to start seeing changes in yourself and your outcomes.
When it comes to life, it encompasses everything, your actions, your choices, and your outcomes. And the thing at Equality Education that we stress to everybody is thoughts, feelings, and actions. And these are the only things that we're in control of in life. Have we noticed? Right? This is the only thing that we actually can change anything about. All the things that are happening around you is whatever. Radical accountability comes back to taking that responsibility for your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, the only things that you can control.
Yeah, it's literally how you react to your life experiences. You're either running away or you're taking accountability and responsibility. But mainly, you are the co-creator of your life. I think that's the breakthrough of this episode, is that you have a part in how your life actually plays out. A lot of individuals think life is just happening to me, and they go into almost like giving up on life because they feel like bad things are happening, or like whatever their experience may be. But sometimes it's easy. You have to recognize your part in it.
Yes. And one of the quotes that I really love is that everything that you are not changing, you are choosing.
You are choosing. We got to repeat that. No, repeat that. Repeat that. Repeat that.
Everything that you are not changing, you are choosing. Right? And so this comes back to that co-creator of life, which is all the things that I'm doing are making outcomes for myself and the people around me. And so you could say, oh, well, I don't like this thing. But if you haven't done anything to change it, guess what? You're choosing it. You're choosing it.
It's creating an outcome.
Yeah.
It always does.
In some way. Yeah, exactly.
In some way.
And so the strongest impact that you can have on your own life, because these things are really big and it's like, where do I start? Sounds really good, but how do I actually do this? Is that you can focus on taking ownership over these things that you can control, your thoughts, feelings, and actions, and at the same time, letting go of everything else. Also sounds really hard. But we're going to give you some hands-on tips. Don't worry. We won't leave you out there. Don't worry.
We won't.
But that's a really important part, is that while you are affecting the things that you can take control of, at the same time you're letting go of the things that you cannot. And that's part of life. Yes.
You are letting go of the things you cannot.
One of the things that I feel like I started with when I was on my journey of taking accountability and personal responsibility for myself, which is something that I see in a lot of people, is focusing on letting go of the need to be right. This was one of the first things I had to let go of because it was affecting me in every area of my life. And when I realized that I didn't have the confidence and the courage to actually admit that I was wrong, it opened up a whole world for me, because I understood for the first time that it was like, oh, you just aren't comfortable being vulnerable in this way. You've never practiced it. You haven't tried it. You don't know what it feels like. And when things like that would come up, I would totally go in the opposite direction. I was like, oh, this is not for me.
But people experience that often, right? Where they're so attached to needing to be right. It's not even
Yeah.
about it. What you said about vulnerability is such a key, because when people come into a conversation, you have to almost prioritize listening, understanding, and also valuing your point of view as well. But when you're so attached to being right, it almost creates a block between you and the other person, and also creates a block between you and what life is trying to teach you, right?
For sure.
And I see a lot of individuals that, like, when you're in the need to be right, it can correct me if I'm wrong, Ari, but it can get lonely sometimes,
Definitely.
right?
Definitely. But it's almost like, it's so funny because it's almost like I would rather choose the loneliness over that way that I feel like I'm protecting myself. Like I'm
Mm.
like, no, I can't let that guard down. I can't let people see me vulnerable. I can't be in a situation where someone sees that, like, you're kind of saving face. You're trying to
Mm-hmm.
look perfect to everybody. And sometimes, I mean, for sure, me in the past, for sure, I would have chosen the loneliness over that. For
But why
sure.
why change? What was the catalyst of you letting go of the need to be right? And like what was that moment?
For me, everybody, y'all should think of your own answer, because I know anybody who is stuck in that moment of needing to be right, you can resonate with what we're talking about right now. But for me,
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a partner who I started, my now husband, but started a relationship when I was young and was needing to be right. And
I feel like a
and
lot of people can relate to that actually.
and we've made it through the fire, through a lot of fires of me in that past self version of myself. But he held up the mirror, and he was the first person that actually showed that I was doing that. I
Mm.
didn't know, I didn't have the words for it before that point in time. And he said to me, like, why are you always so defensive? That's what it was. I'm always
Mm.
defensive, like in any situation where it would be like I should be taking responsibility. I would have an excuse, like, on deck, right?
All the time. I
Right.
relate to this, yeah.
And that was me. Like, what's your excuse this time? Like that, I had the excuse book. It was like, So he really pointed that out for the first time, and after that point, every time it became easier and easier for me to recognize the pattern that I was so accustomed to, that was actually
Mm.
very hurtful to myself and the people around me that wanted to get close. And I was like, I gotta
Mm.
change. I gotta change. I want to keep this person I love. I gotta change.
I love that you were able to talk about, like, your why. Because this is very confronting when you realize that maybe I haven't been taking that accountability in this argument, and I'm focused on maybe, being right. And it's hard sometimes, but when you figure out, like, is it really worth not taking on that responsibility, right? Because if you haven't taken on that responsibility, it would have impacted your relationship. But I feel like a lot of individuals don't know what the cost is if you're not accountable in your life, if you're not really seeing how you're playing a part. Because I remember, like, when I was younger, I was thinking about what is your excuse this time. A lot of my excuse was like, I'm tired. I would run away from things that would demand me to almost like get uncomfortable or stand on my 2 feet, because I was scared. In a way, I was scared. I wasn't taking any accountability of that. So my excuse was, I'm tired. I'm okay. I don't really need to do that. And I was blocking myself from actually having new experiences in my life and being open in my life because of this excuse. But going back to what you were saying is like, now, like, people don't realize, like, when you don't take radical accountability, you're blocking something beautiful from possibly growing in your life, right? Like, you're blocking that moment. So I hope that motivates people to really think about in their life, what am I not taking accountability for? And what is that blocking? what is that preventing me from experiencing?
And I think that you just said about like I'm tired, or I don't do, sometimes people will say, oh, I don't do that,
Mm-hmm.
that's not me or whatever. And that's a self-defined blockage of you keeping yourself from stepping into something that might be a really awesome experience, but you have your defenses up. And
Mm.
so you're not, in that way, in a more generalized sense, you're not taking accountability for your life. You're keeping
Mm-hmm.
yourself from having those growth moments, and then we look around and be like, oh, I don't like this and I don't like that. But if you didn't change it, you chose it. So
You, I know, and that every time I hear it, every time I hear you say that, something in my heart goes, oof, it like caves in because I'm thinking to myself, man, like what am I? Even we're always growing too, Ari. Like even though we've
yes.
known these concepts, we practice it in our life, we reach a level where we're really happy. There's always things that I'm like always like always trying to take accountability now, even in my happiest moment of life. I'm trying to take even more accountability. And I'm wondering what else in my life am I choosing that I'm not even recognizing that I could really like level up. Like that
Yeah.
process never stops. Even if you're looking at your life right now and you're like, I love every part of your life. That process of analyzing your life, it never stops.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, and fortunately or unfortunately, I think once you start to practice it, you just notice more and more ways that you can do better for yourself by taking more accountability and responsibility in your
Mm-hmm.
life. You notice the
Mm-hmm.
things that it's like, oh, I've been avoiding that. And these things start really small, right? Because it can be hard to practice when you're starting from square one and you're overwhelmed by self awareness. Because self awareness is a really, really big part of
Ooh.
this. Where it's like, oh my
Self
god, the
awareness.
mirror.
Dun dun dun. Self
Thank
awareness.
you.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that we can both promise for sure is that if you choose to go down this journey of being friends with us and all supporting each other on our process of growing and learning and discovering our greatness collectively,
Mm-hmm.
you will benefit so much from the ways that you make yourself uncomfortable, that you will realize in the aftermath how it was the best choice that you made. Like it wasn't oh, okay, so I had to let go of my defenses, and I had to tell people that sometimes I was wrong, and that was really uncomfortable when I first started. And now it's like instinctual.
Is
Like
oh, I
it's your
know.
go-to because you made a new pattern. It's awesome.
It gets easier. It gets
For
easier. I think
sure.
self awareness in general gets easier because you have more grace for yourself, and you have like there's almost this confidence in, oh, I can change this. Like there's this confidence when you understand that you are the co-creator and you have the ability to change what you don't like, right? And self-awareness is not a revolving door. It is not. Once you go through, once you have that recognition of what you've been co-creating, it will almost be like a bug in the back of your mind.
Yes.
Like, oh, you're doing this again. Like,
Yes.
oh, this is happening again. What are you going to do? And because you're more aware of it, you can almost catch yourself more. And that
Yep.
leads to when then you have a choice. You can either be accountable or you can run away. Now, I feel like people have heard these two words that I'm going to say, but they don't really understand it. The opposite of radical accountability is staying in victim mode. Now, and everyone
Mm.
talks about victim mode, right? Everyone is like, oh, being the victim, right? And I'm like, do you actually know what that is when you are being the victim? You're not committing to being the co-creator of your life. You feel helpless, powerless. You're always being wrong. You feel like you're always being wronged by others or their circumstances. You love blaming others. You love blaming life, and you're never putting up the mirror. That's the opposite of radical accountability. Like, you made me feel this way, or life is just happening to me this way. You almost like, you almost give up your power in this life when you're in victim mode, right?
Has anybody had this? Like, as you're talking about this, my mind is just bringing up all of the instances that I have had these situations for myself, or that I've seen other people go through it. But has anyone had that situation where you have that seed planted? It could be some experience that you had, or it could be some thought or interaction. It doesn't matter. Or you could watch a video, and there's something that's like awakened inside of you. And it's a thought that you can't unhave. It's that revolving door that once you've gone through, you have that self-awareness and you can't go back to unknowing it. However, what you do with that knowledge is that power, right? So what you do with that knowledge is the thing that actually makes a difference. We can know everything in the whole entire world that's ever been created under the sun. If you don't use that knowledge for your good and the good of those around you, it doesn't matter. You couldn't have had it in the first place. It doesn't matter. So then you can have the knowledge, you can know that you should do better, but then you don't do better and you keep yourself in victim mode.
And you can. People, we have to almost pop this bubble, right, Ari? People don't realize you can stay in victim mode for the rest of your life. Forever.
No one's coming to save you.
No one's coming to save you. It's not happening. I'm sorry. It sounds so hard. It sounds so like difficult to hear, but if you don't have this realization now, you're never going to get the life that you want to create. You have to step up and be the co-creator of your life. This happy ending that a lot of individuals feel that magically occurs like a Disney movie, you have to create it. It's not just going to come and just like open itself up to you. You have to commit to your happy ending. You have to make happy happen, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the thing about that, when you aren't going after your happy ending and you're staying in victim mode, is it doesn't always look like the definition of what we think of as a victim, right? Because a victim is somebody that we think of as like weak, or maybe, meager, or maybe soft voice, quiet, maybe more of a quiet person who's not taking control of their power. But when I look at, I don't very often have many of those characteristics that I choose. I'm usually more on the louder, more outspoken, opinionated end of the spectrum. But I was being in victim mode by blaming other people for the circumstances of my life. And I was getting away with it. Like, it was like, I thought that I was righteous in that, you know? Like, I was painting myself as the victim for my own choices. And then I was convincing the people around me that this truth that I had fabricated should also be the thing that they view as their truth. It's kind of twisted.
People don't understand how victim mode can show up in so many different ways.
Yes.
I love that point that you just made, because people think you're right. It's just weak. It's very like, like the world is happening to me. Woe is me. All that. But it shows up in so many ways. Even when, I'm going to give another example. When people say, I'll wait until, I'm not ready yet. Have you ever noticed that? Like, people will delay their happiness because of them almost agreeing to victim mode and not being ready for that level of accountability. They're not ready. You're never ready. But I think that people wait. They wait their whole lives to be ready. And then time moves forward.
That's
period.
It moves forward. You're just going to wait to not feel ready later instead of not feeling ready now.
And it's so hard to get people to jump. It's so difficult to get people jump. You have to jump in life. You have to jump.
Yep. And the thing is like an example of that might be like, I don't have experience for this particular job, let's say, right? But the fact of the matter is, the way that this life experience is structured is that we get ready for the thing by experiencing the thing before you've ever experienced it before. So how you gonna get ready if you don't let yourself try?
Oh, you gotta repeat that, Ari. You have to repeat that.
I don't
You
even
have
know what
to.
I just said.
No, you're right. You cannot be ready for a situation that you have not already almost committed to experiencing new for the first time. You have to experience it new. You have to try before you have to try. You have to experience it new before you can be even ready for the next opportunity. But you have to get out of this victim mode. And because the thing is, what people don't realize about victim mode, it's so comfortable. It's so comfortable to stay in. It's so comfortable. It's addicting. It's so addicting to be helpless.
Yeah. And you'll always find a new excuse. You always find an excuse to match that. Yes. Yep.
You'll always find a new excuse. Even like, actually, even, this is going to be a little bit difficult, but even with individuals who have been hurt before and then they never want to try to trust again, they always like prevent themselves from experiencing something new, and they always stop themselves. They're not ready or whatnot for almost a new outcome in their life because of what has been reflected in their past. They're also staying in victim mode.
Or you had an experience with one particular thing or person that you ended up not trusting, and then you write off all of it altogether.
All of it.
It's like, oh, none of that is for me. Like, oh, I had a bad marriage and I couldn't trust him, and then you're like, I'm never falling in love again. I'm never doing it. And it's like, that's not fair. It keeps you from you had that one bad experience, and it's not to overlook the pain and the struggle that people go through when they're co-creating with themselves and with other people. We've all been through that. Mm-hmm. But you owe it to yourself to try again. There's always a new experience out there for you that can create a new level of learning about yourself, and you have to take responsibility for going out and finding it.
You have to embrace your power. You have to embrace your power.
Absolutely.
You have to embrace your power because you have a choice. Just like Ari said, you're always choosing. You have the choice to either be the victim or you can be the victor. You have that choice. So I want you to think right now in your life, audience, are you a victim or are you a victor? And I want you to give the space to be honest. Are you creating excuses in your life? Or are you committing to being the co-creator and creating your happy ending? What are you choosing every single day?
And you might have some areas where you feel like one, and you might have some areas where you feel like the other, right? Because we're more skilled, like we said, at things that we've tried and tried again, and you gain that confidence and courage, and you know, I'm capable of this. And there might be other things that you're struggling at discovering with yourself, or struggling to establish yourself in a certain way, and you're making excuses, and so you're staying the victim instead of becoming the victor of your own life story. And that's really where the process of letting go of the things that have happened to you, which sometimes Soleil and I would argue and say that those things happen for you. But there's always a lesson inside of all of those things that come our way. But that's where you letting go of those things will give you the ability to more powerfully move forward and focus on different outcomes than what you've already received in the past. Because that's the key to being accountable and being responsible, is having the trust within yourself that I can try again and I can create a different outcome that's more favorable for myself. It doesn't always have to be how it's always been. Period.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be how it's always been.
Yeah.
You're right. And when you are open to new possibilities, you're letting go of the need to be right. right? And you're almost, oh, you're okay with life challenging you. You're okay with having an assumption and potentially being wrong. And I
Terrifying.
think that comes with, it's very terrifying, but it almost comes with our letting go of the ego part in our creation of life. So it's really letting go of the need to be right, of protecting yourself and being open to possibilities and even being challenged and being wrong. And I think it also aligns itself with humbling yourself to know that you don't know everything. You don't know how it's going to play out, but you're responsible for your part and you're committed to your co-creation. But let life happen. I think a lot of individuals don't realize, they don't let life happen, and then they become a little bit controlling by saying, by having all the excuses and by having the victim mode and the assumptions of how life is going to happen. You're becoming controlling instead of letting go and humbling yourself and saying, I don't know everything. Let life happen. And I could only be accountable for my actions.
Yep. So intense.
It is. It's very intense.
For those of us out there who are trying this for the first time and the second time and the third time, do not be super critical of yourself, because you will fumble. Sometimes you'll get it right and sometimes you won't. And it is only when you try again that you move to that next phase of your own development. You have to try this stuff again and again. Like, what you're talking about is big, right? Humbling yourself, letting go of your ego, put your ego down to the floor. Let yourself be a learner of life. And I think I think both of us, we have similar, you can explain your side of how things progressed for you. For me, there were situations where I was forced into, like, I avoided it for a long time. Like victim mode really well. I was getting A+ in that category. And then there were people that the universe sent my way that were like, nah, girl, you're about to learn this lesson. You've been stuck within yourself for long enough. It's not getting you to the next level. It won't. It simply won't. It never will. You can stay right here, or you can hear what this lesson is coming in to tell you about yourself. And when that happened to me again and again, because those lessons are the same, right? They might look different in the details, but the same theme represents itself that is waiting for you to take responsibility and accountability. And eventually I became a learner of those things that came my way. And it made it so much easier because I didn't have to be defensive every time something came up. I was able to let go of all of that stuff that I was trying to pretend like it didn't exist the whole time, and it was exhausting out of me. It was draining my soul, right? And when that happened, when I allowed myself to become a learner of those things instead of fighting against them, the whole world shifted in my favor, like overnight. It was crazy.
I
feel
love
like you've
that.
had the same experience. I feel like you've
Same
had the same
thing.
like
Same thing. And I'm so glad that I was able to humble myself and be a learner and let life surprise me, let life happen, because I see some individuals really struggle with that and they don't realize that time is moving forward, and then they get stuck, and then you go, okay, they shove everything, all their desires down by not taking accountability, always being in victim mode, always like not recognizing their power. They're shoving it down, and then there's the boiling point, right, where it's like, oh, it's time for all, you have to learn these lessons, and time is moving forward, and you keep going, you keep shuffling it down. People don't realize time moves forward and you're going to reach a breaking point. Now, how devastating that breaking point may be is all about how you commit to the transformation in life. And almost the moment that you stop, the moment that you're like, this is enough. This is enough. Like, you can prevent having that I don't even know how to explain that so well, Ari, but there's this time where you're just so overwhelmed by the things that you have not been learning or not accepting or defending, that life throws you such a curveball. And in that curveball, the curveball keeps getting bigger and worse and worse and worse until you humble yourself and become a learner. Until you humble yourself and become a learner, because your ego is going to fight against accountability as much as it can.
Yes.
And it's going because ultimately it does not, your ego does not want you to feel vulnerable. It doesn't want you to feel criticized or inferior. Your brain is made to protect itself. And sometimes people don't realize the defenses that are at work may not actually be progressing your life. It may actually be keeping you safe in the moment, but it's not helping you grow. Yep. And I think that's the big thing. We don't want our audience, we don't want you to be stuck in the same situation over and over and over again. And don't only to be comfortable right now. You are creating your life every day, and you create that outcome every single day. If you have to get uncomfortable now to create almost permanent happiness in an area, do it. Don't run away from it. Do it. If you have to get uncomfortable in that relationship because you have to take some accountability, do it now. Yeah. Because it will benefit you in the long run. Right?
Yeah. And the thing about that, because it's so hard, like the doing it is the second part, right? Mm-hmm. The first part is you being so honest with yourself where you don't have to be wrong for the fact that you want things to be different. I think that's where people get really caught up, because it's like, I don't like the job that my parents wanted me to have. Right? I don't like the way that I have the relationship that I have with food, but I still do the same thing every day and I don't choose anything different. I don't like the way that my partner's passive aggressiveness makes me feel, but I haven't, required a different way of communicating. So it's like we get caught in these things, and then we feel like exactly like you said, it's easier to just stay put because your brain is programmed for this. So again, this is not your fault. You are hardwired through tens of thousands of years of evolution for you to function this way, because when we are not growing and you are in that same pattern, your brain says, yes, this is safe. Good job. Great. Let's keep doing it. That's perfect. The problem is, like you said, you will never be able to unlock that next part of yourself. You will never be able to resolve that nagging voice inside of you that tells you that there's something more that you are not going after. It will never leave you.
Never.
Those people who if you don't take radical accountability, if you don't take personal responsibility in your life, those people reach the end of their life with a lot of nagging in their minds. And it gets louder as you deny yourself your own discovery of your greatness.
And you know what?
Crazy.
It's so crazy that you say that, because when you reach that end of, the last phases of life, everything that you've been not taking accountability for, all the changes that you wish you did, it's going to, as you said, it's going to come right back up.
It's crystal clear.
It's coming right back up, and and you have a choice. You ultimately have the choice right now of how you're going to feel in that last phase of life. Yeah. You have that choice. Do you want to look back and say to yourself, wow, I put so much effort into being there in my relationships, and I traveled, I did whatever ignites you. You want to look back and feel fulfilled, or do you want to look back and feel regret? Because radical accountability is the key. It is the key right now. It's the key to feeling fulfilled versus regret when you're at that last phase of life. And people for some reason, they don't take into account that we are all going to die. And it's hard, it's a hard reality, but we are all going to die. And how you live right now determines how you feel in the future. 100%. But also it's like if you live with that level of urgency, you will approach every area of your life differently.
Yep. Yep. It changes your whole mindset. That's facts. And the question that you said in there that I feel like every listener needs to ask themselves is, do you want to live a life where you feel fulfilled at the end of it? Or do you want to live a life where you feel full of regrets at the end of that? You don't know when the end of the lifetime is coming. Determine for yourself what your choice will be. And if you are choosing to feel fulfilled, the guarantee that you can have with us is that it gets easier as you keep trying. It feels very overwhelming to start. It feels like you don't know where to start. It feels like every time you try, you mess it up and it's terrible and you'd rather just stay in the pattern of safeness. But we promise you that you can follow these different lessons that we give you because we are your friends who want you to win.
Yes.
And we will show you. We've done this step by step. It's not like these are not the things that you are just born with the skills and everybody knows how to do it. You have to practice this interpersonally between yourself internally and then outside with the rest of the world. And you can actually create that outcome for yourself where you can live a life where you don't have regrets at the end.
Who does not want that? But it all comes from you providing the safe space for yourself for you to be honest. It also comes from like you not viewing accountability as a threat to your self-worth.
Exactly.
You building yourself internally with your self-esteem and self-worth, which we'll get into later in the season, will help you stand on accountability, and it will be less of a painful process. It'll be right. Like it just, when you have that foundation in yourself, and if you struggle in that, we'll have an episode on self-esteem and everything. But if you struggle with the self, we got you. If you struggle with the self-worth, that's like, I need you to create a safe space within yourself to know that your self-worth is not up for negotiation. Yes. And your radical accountability, just because you're wrong, it shouldn't lead to shame. Because you're wrong, it shouldn't lead to shame. You can be wrong in a moment, and that's it. You're wrong. You learn from it and grow. Don't take it as part of a characteristic of who you are.
And that's an important point, too, because that's something for you to view internally, like not take that shame on for yourself. And then to also surround yourself with people who don't push that on you, right? Because if we're growing together, I'm going to be wrong and you're going to be wrong. And when I admit that I'm wrong, I need to be okay with that with myself. And then when I am able to feel safe enough to say that out loud, I need you to be accepting of when I admit my mistakes.
You know, I think we've mastered that, Ari. I will say, as business partners, as friends, we've mastered being able to make a mistake and be wrong and it not mean anything. Like, we have that safe space. And I want you to think right now, listeners, who do you have in your life that you ultimately have that safe space with, where you can be wrong and not attacked? Yeah. Like, not attacked at all. You work together to find a solution. That's a friendship. That's a relationship right there.
And if you don't have anybody that comes to mind, that's an awareness moment for you too. Because I can tell you, if there's nobody around you who's giving you that type of unconditional love, then you haven't experienced it with yourself either, which means that you are placing that blame and shame on yourself when you're just trying to go through the process of growing and learning, and you got to make yourself wrong every time.
Yeah, I love that, because people don't understand how much the people around you impact your mindset. Completely impact your mindset. And if you haven't had that level of unconditional love where you can be wrong and grow, how are you able to even be aware of that existence and create it for yourself? How? Yeah. And it's almost like it gets passed on so easily that in family dynamics, especially when you're wrong, especially as a child, you're wrong, it means you're bad.
Punishment.
And then
time.
How can we actually be comfortable with radical accountability if we have that already laid in the back of our mind, in our subconscious? How can we be comfortable with radical accountability? That's why the first thing you have to do is create a safe space within yourself. Safe space within yourself, and then identify. I love that you said that, Ari.
Yeah.
Identify who else can you be safe with, who else can help your growth. I think that a lot of people don't we have that, but a lot of people don't recognize your friends, the people around you, they help you grow.
Yeah.
They help you recognize what you need to be accountable for.
And if you're having a moment where you're trying to give yourself shame because you don't have anybody on your friend and family list who doesn't give you shame, guess what? You have two people,
Period.
Rose and Soleil Laurent, your friends who want you to win.
Period.
Who are here to be accepting of you admitting your mistakes, growing and moving forward. You open a conversation with somebody, you say what you have to say, you understand how you take responsibility and how you can do better next time, and then the both of you let it go and keep it pushing.
Keep it pushing.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. And radical accountability is sometimes it looks like, most times, obviously all times actually, it looks like if I did something quote unquote wrong, right? What action can I take to resolve the situation while understanding my impact? It allows you to be solution oriented versus running away, right? If I said something to someone that hurt them, I should look at the impact that I made in their life and also have a conversation and say, I'm sorry. It's not we make it such a big deal, I know, but it's like if people recognize the impact that they have on each other, right? And we took accountability for when we're wrong, what would the world look like?
It'd be entirely different. Everything about it would be entirely, really what that comes down to is exactly what you're saying, is where people are able to let that ego go in those interactions with each other. You don't have to be tied to all these things. And honestly, going back to what you said a little minute ago, a lot of those things were imprinted on you in those early years of development. It's just patterning that you have taken on. It's just certain things, beliefs that you have, and things, the ways that you've acted, and you say it's a part of who I am and all of that. But it's like, you don't have to claim those things. You don't have to take responsibility for the things that aren't working for you. Let it go.
Let it go.
Right? And that's really hard because sometimes it is the profession that my parents said I had to go into and I actually secretly hate it and it's making my life miserable. But you do not have to. You are choosing to take responsibility for that thing. You can set it down and let it go and deal with the uncomfortableness that comes up from the result of your choices. But that's what adults do. And you'll get over it.
You'll get over it. Everyone will get over it.
Yes.
It's a fact. It's a fact. And you ultimately have to be so aware of even what you said earlier about like almost analyzing your early years, even your childhood years, to understand almost your relationship with accountability and consequences. Because if you analyze your relationship with that, you can almost recognize what is your fear that exists under the resistance of being accountable. Again, what is your fear that causes you to resist being accountable?
She's asking y'all.
I am. Because people don't realize the victim mode mindset, the running away from accountability, it's all rooted in fear. And our relationship to fear is determined so much by our environment growing up and how we grew up and the way that we faced punishment, right? The way that we faced punishment or someone taught us punishment has a big impact on what we fear.
Absolutely. Or the way that the adults around you process them not looking good and trying to save face and live in perfection. Or the way that the adults had disagreements around you and how they resolved not feeling right or feeling defensive or losing control, right? You know? Think about when we have seen adults lose control when you were little. How did they deal with that process? Were you around a group of people who were emotionally volatile and overly reactive to situations that came up in life, and they created a whole tizzy around things? Or were you, the less likely option, around adults who calmly took control of situations and were solution oriented and communicated with each other in a respectful manner to find a solution, let go of what has happened, and move forward?
And another
You've
example.
never seen it.
No,
Never
definitely
seen
not.
it.
And but what I have seen actually is individuals who will have a conflict and they'll run away. They run away. They go, goodbye, and then nothing gets resolved. And then they're expected to, for days. You're expected to get over it, but there's no solution, and then you get upset when the situation happens again. You get so upset.
And when the situation happens again, you've already built a solid layer of resentment around that topic because there was no one who took accountability and responsibility for themselves to make a better resolution when this comes up again. And that, I love that point. I love that point because this is the thing that I was going to say it saved my marriage, but it made me eligible to even be married to someone in the first instance.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Big time. And the thing is, big time. And the thing is when you guys have interpersonal reaction, all of that with somebody, a child, a family member, a friend, a lover, whatever, you aren't going to get it right because you guys are practicing different dynamics and you both are always changing and you're in different moods and people are just volatile emotional human beings, right? And something happens and it creates that moment. If you do not communicate and take responsibility for what you brought to the table and then have a compromise on how you both will approach the same situation differently next time, you will never learn and grow alongside each other. This is like the requirement. And I call it over communicating in my relationship because it has
oh my gosh. I remember when you told me about over communicating, changed everything around me. It changed everything.
And that's it's so important. And that's the basis of it is we messed up. We both had something that we did wrong here. It's going to come up again. And when it does, I will try to act this way. And then the other person, I will try to act this way. You both take responsibility and accountability. And then when it comes up again and you don't act the way you said you were going to act, they get to say, excuse me, you said
be accountable.
I'm
Ari,
holding you accountable for your responsibility.
Ari, as you're talking, I am like my cheeks are getting sore. I'm clenching my jaw because I remember being in a conflict with my partner, who I love. I love my husband. Shout out to him. He's incredible.
You're working
so much for him. Yes. I remember getting into an argument because I was the person that would run away. I would be like, I'm out. Like, yeah. And I remember my sister used to hate that when I was in arguments with her. Before I had, a level up and, embrace radical accountability. Yes, this was old Soleil. Right. Old Soleil was in a conflict argument with my husband. And he was like, oh, you gonna run away again? And I was like, oh.
Wow. He called you all the way out.
I was like, I remember I remember because, my thing was my sister at the time lived 10 minutes from me. So if I needed to get in a car and we had an argument, I was like, I'm out. Like, goodbye, right? But he checked me so hard, and I had a choice right then and there. And I remember sitting in the living room and breathing and say, what are you going to do? Because I had my keys. And then I also had, like, and I also, like, could sit in the uncomfort with my partner, who I love dearly. And I decided, and to be honest with you, my ego wouldn't let him win. So I was like, I'm going to stay. I'm going to sit here. We're going to talk it through and, work it through. And that was such a big moment for me because I realized you think that you're only doing this in one aspect of your life. I was doing this in every relationship. I was just creative about it, So even with my sister, when I would get in arguments when I was a kid, I would be like, checked out. Yeah. Checked out. I'm out. And that is unhealthy because you're not giving the relationship a chance. You went into protecting mode and you're not allowing vulnerability to happen, which was my whole big thing growing up. You're not allowing vulnerability to happen so that you're both committed to creating a solution together. And that takes a level of accountability and humbleness that would challenge anyone, I bet. Anyone. Any listener that's listening, tell me you haven't had a moment where you were challenged to that level. And what did you do?
And with that great perfect example that you just shared, what are the things that someone in your life is calling you again and again to take accountability for? Where are the moments where someone we are always in argument situations given the moment to take responsibility for yourself? Always. This right now, we're talking obviously when you're just having a communication or miscommunication with another person. But like you said, that same theme trickles down into every area of how you're acting and how you're treating yourself and how you are maybe disrespecting yourself, to be honest. If I'm being honest.
If we're being honest. If we're being honest.
On Friends Who Want You to Win.
Hello. You have to be. That's the only way you grow. You got to be honest. Honest with each other. Honest with yourself.
And so the only way for you to actually move past all of these things that we're saying, because it's hard at first because you've been doing it for a lifetime, right? So it's hard first to recognize it with self-awareness. Then it's hard to actually take accountability for it in the moment or even afterwards. Sometimes you have to start doing it afterward and then you work your way to doing it in the moment. I definitely did that. And then, which is why apologizing is so important. And then the last part of it is where you actually have to take that full accountability for yourself, hold yourself accountable, and make a difference in those areas of your life moving forward into the future. And it all comes with you starting in that honest place. And then, like we've mentioned here, you have to practice it again and again.
Yeah.
These are not skills. The things we talk about here are not skills where it's just like you learn how to like do your multiplication table and then you always have the answer, right? The details are different. The way we grow is different. The people that we find ourselves around are always different. And so you're always, like you were saying at the beginning, like we're always growing. We're always getting to that next level. We're always growing. And then we're always having to look back and readjust on the things that worked before that might not be working for you now.
Very important. Very important.
Yes. And we have a formula to help everybody out.
Yes. I mean, we discussed so much about radical accountability, why it's important. We even give you guys examples, but we want you to leave with something that you can utilize today. So if this is for the purpose of what you do next time you're confronted with a challenge. What do you do next time that the little back voice in your head says, maybe you shouldn't have done that? What is the process, Ari? Talk to me. What is the process?
It's exactly what we've described here, but the first part comes with owning it. So remember this, write it down right now while we're telling you, take notes on it so you can bust your paper out and be like, I'm following this formula because I don't know what else to do. Owning it is when you acknowledge what your role was in the situation or whatever happened towards yourself or with other people, and you cut out the blame and the excuses. So I don't try to externalize it based on something else. I don't try to say it was you and it wasn't me. You remain in that space of owning it. You only take responsibility for yourself. And even if you know that person was wrong, and even if you know they did it, and all the finger pointing, only
use
focus.
it. Yes, use it as a growing opportunity, right? Like use it as an opportunity to understand the impact of your energy.
Yes. How did what I brought to this situation make it better or worse? Owning it. Next step.
Next.
Yes.
Next, number 2, learn from it. This is where you have to humble yourself because you have to reflect on what you can improve or what you need to change. This is such an important step because if you can reflect on this part and what you need to change, the lesson is so much closer to being embodied in your spirit. It's so much closer to being embodied in your mind. So you have to reflect on what you need to improve or change. Take the time to recognize, what is this lesson? Learn from it.
And that's where that real growth comes from, because you have to know what you're changing. You have to know what you have been choosing, and then you have to know what you're changing to actually make the change, right? And then the last step, which is the part that takes the practice the most, is acting on it. So you have to actually take responsibility. You have to actually take accountability, whether you do that with yourself or you have people around you who you say, this is my intention, hold me accountable. And then you make those intentional changes moving forward. So it's the example that we just gave before, which is you have the altercation, you say, I need to do this differently next time. And then when differently comes up next time, you actually act on it differently.
Yes.
Right.
So important.
And that's what makes the change. That's what you are actually choosing something different in the moment. And that is how your life develops into the picture of what you feel is most fulfilling to you. And so that phase is act on it.
Act on it.
It's 3. I mean, very simple.
It's very simple. Own it, learn from it, act on it. You cannot neglect one of these steps, though. Don't neglect one of these steps. Don't own it, learn from it, and then do nothing about it.
Make you at square one.
Zero chin. Come on. Like, that doesn't work. Okay? Like, if you have the opportunity to act on it, do so. You'll be surprised at what occurs next.
And we've all seen varying degrees of this in our experience and role modeled to us, and over time, people you've interacted with. You have to set your own definition for these things. Forget what everybody else has told you about everything else. It's your life. You're living it. You're the one choosing to be fulfilled at the end of it instead of full of regrets. And you're starting today by taking accountability for yourself and how you approach yourself and others. And that's what's most important. You focus on you. This is what Soleil and I did to really change our life. We focused on ourselves. We got positively selfish.
Positively selfish. I love that. Stop blaming others. Stop blaming life. You know, you stop pointing the finger outside of yourself. Turn it around. Point it at you. Look at that mirror. You are the co-creator of your life. You can create your worst nightmare, or you can create the best happy ending. And that's all up to you.
Yep, absolutely. And while you are in that process at a quality education, we will always remind you that while you are pointing your finger at yourself to take accountability and responsibility, remember that self-reflection towards yourself is not self-criticism. You do not have to be wrong for the things that happened in the past. You are simply taking accountability for the things that you will act on in the future. And being reflective of yourself, self-reflection, does not equal self-criticism. Approach yourself with love and openness and excitement, and we are all here to learn and grow together.
Yes. So thank you
see
so
you
much.
next time.
Yes, thank you so much for listening. Radical accountability.
Yeah.
Come on, 2025.
Let's get it.
Peace out. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Friends Who Want You to Win, where we give you the everyday advice that you need to boost your self-confidence, build meaningful relationships, how to stop self-sabotage, and so much more.
Yes, but your story doesn't end here. If you are ready to break free from old patterns, step into your greatness, and take control of your life, our monthly membership is your next move.
Inside, you'll find life-changing tools, live expert guidance, and a community dedicated to supporting you to unlock your full potential.
So don't let fear or doubt hold you back. Reach out today for more info on why joining us will be the best decision you have ever made for yourself. Your greatness is waiting. Let's discover it together.
For more information on how to join, get in touch with us at www.theequalityeducation.com.